Hey, everybody. Welcome back to my 30-second Facebook Live. You can catch all my previous ones on my website, aprilhenry.com, or on my YouTube channel, which is also called April Henry. My plan is to do these every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time until I run out of topics. See, I think I've worn this rash guard before. Uh, um, in terms of lipstick, same as yesterday, although I will say, when I watched the Netflix special, it's a series called Unorthodox, the one part that I felt was unrealistic was that the woman had never worn makeup before in her life. She grew up ultra Orthodox Jewish. She sees another woman in a bathroom putting on lipstick, asks if she can borrow it, and then puts it on perfectly. Why can't I do that? It's always smudged outside the lines or doesn't color half the lips and I do it all wrong. But in their fictional reality, she could do it right the first time. So I also said I was going to start talking about books. I just finished reading a book called My Dark Vanessa by, I believe the lady's name is Catherine Russell. This is a book that is a novel, but it is the experience of a young woman who was groomed, seduced, and was in a relationship with her English teacher at a boarding school when she was in ninth grade. And there was some controversy over the book. Another person who wrote a memoir about a similar experience felt that she had ripped off her story, but then the author had to out herself as someone who had also experienced a similar thing. And I would think that those kind of books, those kind of experiences would have many thematic elements in common, simply because those guys probably have a playbook that starts with telling somebody how special and unique they are. Anyway, it was a really good read. It's very dark, and I would not recommend it for teenagers. I think it's a book for adults, but it gave me an insight into what it would be like to be that person and how you might, for a long time, not even think of yourself as a victim. So today and tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about even more ways to make your book a page turner. Um, One of the first ways I wanted to talk about was to cut backstory. Readers want to know what's happening now, not what happened in the past. If it's so important that you think you can't cut it, maybe you need to begin your book earlier so that you can incorporate that. And it doesn't just feel like something that's not important, because things that took place before story now do not feel as important. Another thing I think that can make your book a page turner is to give each of your characters a secret and then see what they do to keep it a secret. I'm writing a book right now called Two Truths and a Lie. And all of the characters have some sort of a secret, which is going to make them act in interesting ways and also make suspicion fall on them when one of the characters dies. Another thing that I like to do, I think I might have mentioned this before, I read it in a writing book. It was a tip from John Dufresne, who is a wonderful writer. I always thought his name was John Dufresne because that's how it's spelled, but I guess because I'm not from the South, I didn't realize his name is pronounced John Dufresne. Anyway, he says that you should make a list of 10 things that will arouse the most emotion in your character, and then make them experience those 10 things. And they can be good or bad. Like if they like cats, they can either find a kitten or they could accidentally run over one when they're coming home from work. And you can turn those into scenes. Another way to make your book more interesting and exciting is to set it up, especially, and this works for a mystery, is to set it up that the prime suspect ends up dead. Then the whole premise that your fictional detective, amateur or pro, was working on is going to be turned upside down. I always think at the end of each chapter for a book, things need to be worse. And that's true even for comedies. If you watch Modern Family, there's usually like 3 plots going on in each one, and everything gets worse. Even though it's a comedy because things are getting worse. Another way to make your book more of a page turner is to have multiple characters and cut between them at key points so that you leave the reader hanging with each time you switch points of view. Another way to make it more tense is to replace every overcome obstacle with an even greater obstacle, so that they never actually ever get what they want. I like to turn the tables with a betrayal, the trusted friend, or even a family member, or flip it. Show that the bad guy really has a good side to him. One of my best reviewed books was called Learning to Fly. And in that book, there is a character who is a bad guy. There's two bad guys chasing this one young woman. And one of the bad guys ends up, the more he learns about her, the more he likes her. And good morning, George. He ends up being a good guy, which is not how I plotted it out, but it worked very well, and I think that led to some of those starred reviews. For especially tense chapters, alternate actions, thoughts, dialogue, description. I'll even put those down when I'm writing a tense chapter. Actions, thought, dialogue, description. Slow it down, milk it. It's like watching a movie where they really will slow down the scary part. Hold off on confrontations. Let the character fret and stew. It's more interesting them worrying about it than them actually having that confrontation. And the same thing with people who are in love with each other. Keep lovers apart and longing more interesting. Have your protagonist act out the crime or the upcoming date or whatever. Have him practice something he's dreading and have it all go wrong. Why use an ordinary setting when you can give us something to remember? I have a book where at the end of it, the main confrontation is set at an amusement park at night. So I went to Oaks Park, and I didn't try and get in after midnight, but I walked around and I thought about what would it look like at night and where could you hide and what could you do. And then I also found some photos online of an abandoned amusement park that someone had taken at night. So I could kind of get the feeling of where all the shadows would be. Another way to up the tension is to drop a hint that had I but known kind of thing. Sometimes that can be a little bit corny, but if you have one or two, it's not too much, and it can make the reader start to have some anticipatory tension about what's really going to happen. And then use one final twist. I mean, there's a reason that it's almost a cliche that people aren't as dead as they seem, that people come back, that things that look like they're conquered are not quite conquered. So those are some tips for upping the tension. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk more about even more ways to spice things up. And I can't remember what Thursday is. And then Friday's an Ask Me Anything. So if you have any questions you want me to answer on Friday, ask them now. Until then, you guys have a great rest of your day. Try and stay sane. Set yourself really small goals, and then you'll feel like you accomplished something. That's what I've been working on. So bye-bye.